and we sorted out that issue. Just give us a moment, it's going live. I'm going to share my screen with you all very shortly. About it, we are live on YouTube. There we go. And we sorted out that issue. Just give us a moment, it's going live. Okay. So I'm going to just share my screen with you guys over here. Here we go. Can everyone see my screen? You don't have to answer with the sound, just a nod of the head would be great. Yeah, Valter, thank you. So welcome to the SingularityU South Africa online chapter event. This is a great experiment for us to be trying today. We are very excited. We are going live on Zoom and on YouTube. YouTube is live right now. And thank you for all taking the time to be with us while at home. Just some quick housekeeping notes. You can follow us on social media. We've got all our different channels where we post daily on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We are pushing out conversations and discussions around what is happening in the future around exponential technology and around some of these challenges that we are facing. Some housekeeping notes, just to make sure that you always stay on mute unless prompted to unmute. We have made this like a live event, like being in the room all together, so that everyone can share in the experience. If you want to ask a question, there's a little feature in Zoom where you can put up your hand. So if you could please put up your hand, we'll see the little green hand up on the screen, and then we will direct you to ask a question, to unmute yourself. This session is being recorded and will be shared afterwards. And if the Zoom is full, others can join the YouTube channel. Just as SingularityU South Africa, this is a unique experiment that we're trying in collaboration with Development Bank of Southern Africa, our global partner Deloitte, and our strategic partner MTN as our country partners. I think during this time, we've been faced with a number of different challenges. And I think if you asked us in December, would we be sitting at home and trying to work out our lives from our studies and from our home offices, trying to navigate our kids' school curriculums, in December, we would have said no way. And, today it's just a reality that we're facing. And there's been so many different scenarios and so many different discussions around COVID that we've been facing. I think we've never had this avalanche of information at our disposal and so much misinformation. I think the fake news is spreading just as fast as the real news. So it's really important for us to get together with our faculty, with the right groups of people, to discuss how do we deal with COVID and what would life be like afterwards. And some of these scenarios that we are seeing, there are some of these camps out there that are saying COVID is going to end the world. We're going to see millions of deaths, which is very possible, and it's going to change the way we live and work in every way. What are governments going to do? How are governments going to deal with this? Is it going to be police states to help us track this virus? So there's a lot of debate around that. There's also another set of people that are saying this is resetting the world, and this is clearing out all the pollution and all the smog and the things that we're doing wrong with the world. So there's a big camp that's, if you look at Italy, the pollution over Italy over the last couple of months has cleared up incredibly. And this is, a lot of people saying this is a reset for the world. And is it going to be, resetting the earth and Earth's way of fighting back, nature's way of fighting back? So there's these lots of these different camps, but I believe that this is a moment in time where we have this unique opportunity. I heard a great story from Jamie Metzel, one of the Singularity University faculty, where he said when his grandparents were in the late 1930s, came from Eastern Europe, They lived in a small village in Eastern Europe, and they knew nothing. All they knew was their village in Europe. And then one day they got taken and they got put in these camps where they didn't know what was going on, and they thought life was over and there was no hope until some of them managed to get on a boat looking for this new land, in this discovery for this new land. And when they arrived in America, there was this new hope, this new possibility of this opportunity of creating a new life. And that's what I believe that this moment is. It's this defining moment that is going to create this new opportunity for us to develop this new world and this new life. And we're seeing this rapid rise into virtualization like never before. If you had an old colleague that worked with you at work and said, I'll never get onto those Skype meetings, I'll never go into those Zoom calls, that is over now, because we've had this rapid change where if you don't jump into those online platforms, you become irrelevant immediately. And it's the only way for us to survive. So we're seeing this rapid virtualization into online live streaming and virtual reality, which we as Singularity South Africa and Singularity University have been focusing on already. But now with this incredible change, you're going to see this rapid rise into these virtual platforms like we're seeing today. Everyone joining us in on this platform. And even on the weekend, I went and I watched some of the best musicians in the world playing live music for free in their own home studios or in their living rooms. You know, I watched Dave Matthews perform some of his songs, which was absolutely incredible. Seeing the type of skill and the type of, sorry, I'm just getting a notification there to let in 100 people. Let me just jump out for 1 second.
Mick, you're still sharing your screen at the moment.
Yes. Okay. Let me. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. So, I was watching Dave Matthews, and he was really, really incredible. Just the things that he was saying about paying it forward. And if you have a little coffee shop, or a store, or a restaurant that you like going to now that is not operating, how can you pay it forward to keep their lights open? Can you pre-buy meals in advance or pre-buy coffees to help them out during this crisis, so that when the lockdown ends, we can go back to our favorite stores to get our coffee or our food that we love? And I thought this was absolutely amazing. Seeing somebody like Dave Matthews or Jack Johnson playing live from their rooms as a way of paying it forward and coming together and unifying and showing solidarity. So today we're going to talk about two main topics. What does the future of work look like post-COVID? And what are some of the technologies, the exponential technology breakthroughs that we've seen to help save lives and fast track the fight in this disease? We have over 180 chapters around the world as Singularity University, and we are proud to say that 3 of them are in South Africa: Johannesburg, Durban, and Cape Town. We have some of our chapter leaders with us here tonight from Cape Town, Patricia, and from Durban, Pras. And we've done a number of these chapter events over the last few years, which bring the local community together. And we're probably going to be doing many more of them virtually like this, or in different iterations of this. And I'll mention one that we're planning for 2 weeks in virtual reality at the end of the session. Just thought we should mention a bit about Singularity University for the guys that don't know. Our mission as Singularity University is to educate, inspire, and empower leaders to apply exponential technologies to address humanity's grand challenges. We are building a unique model in SingularityU South Africa, where we have an aim to future-proof Africa. SingularityU South Africa aims to build an empowered network of globally connected change makers across Africa who are able to innovate and implement solutions that will solve some of Africa's and the world's greatest challenges. We want South Africa and Africa to lead the way during this technological transformation and create sustainable and holistic ways of living and working. So this is our goal. We've been on this mission for a couple of years now, and we're just getting started. And I think by bringing the community together in events like this, we can make a big difference. And there's a number of groups that you'll be hearing from. There's a number of initiatives that are being started within this community that if there's time after the event, we'll go back into breakout rooms and get people to join some of those groups. In 2017, we started off with our inaugural summit at SingularityU South Africa, where we had an incredible event at Kailami. In 2018, we laid the foundation with the second Singularity South Africa Summit, being the highest rated summit globally out of 18 summits for Singularity University in our little small pocket of South Africa. Then in 2019, we went Exponential. We signed on as Singularity University country partners. We have 12 accredited Singularity University faculty. We ran 2 local executive programs. Those for a small 50 to 60 people executive programs. We had an Exponential Finance Summit, and we had our main summit sold out last year, back again in Kailami. This year, we'll be bringing it back to Kailami on the 14th and 15th of October, and we really hope that we can see everybody in real life and reality at Kailami. If we can't, we will definitely be looking at some virtual options, but we are hoping to see you in real life, and we hope we get over this crazy time. We do run custom programs for organizations, so working with the organization to look at their unique problems and the unique challenges around different exponential technologies. How can they unlock those problems and solve them? And we have our incredible faculty, some of them you'll be hearing from tonight, that we have worked with in all the different exponential technology fields. We've got an executive program coming up in November. Also, we are hoping to have this in person that will take place at Mount Grace, and people can apply via the website. And none of this could be possible without the support of our sponsors, our main collaboration partner, the Development Bank of Southern Africa, our global partner, Deloitte, and our strategic partner, NTN, who are our country partners of SingularityU South Africa. Thank you so much for your commitment and dedication. And we are really making a dent in our small country. And then lastly, just to end off, and if you want to follow us on social, here are our different channels to follow us on social media at SingularityU South Africa. With that, we're going to get into the meat of this evening. I'm going to welcome our panelists. I'm going to just end my screen share and hand it over to Bradley to take over of the screen sharing. Great. I've ended that. Brad, you can begin the screen share over there. Great. So for our panel this evening, we have some of our faculty, Singularity South Africa faculty. We're going to start off with Tanya Knowles, and I'm just going to read her bio. Tanya is, here we go, sorry, these bios are quite long. Tanya is a country manager of Binance South Africa, the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange by trading volume. Her previous roles have included working as a business manager of Adhara, a global provider of liquidity management and international payment solutions for decentralized financial networks, and the managing executive of Fractal Solutions at Straight, where she was tasked with leading a team to research, develop, and implement disruptive technologies focusing on blockchain, distributed ledgers, and crypto assets. Tanya is currently the chairperson of the South African Financial Blockchain Consortium, which represents over 60 of the country's largest financial institutions. She's a faculty member of Singularity South Africa, an ambassador for the Global Blockchain Business Council, and a member of the South African National Blockchain Alliance. Tanya has been internationally recognized as one of the world's leading women in blockchain technology. Having presented across 4 continents, Tanya is a well-renowned speaker and thought leader in her expertise. Tanya has a certification in blockchain technology from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and holds a BA, PDM, and MBA, all from the University of Wits. In her private capacity, she's involved in a number of women's leadership and mentorship initiatives aimed at professional businesswomen. Welcome, Tanya. Our next faculty member would be Mr. Valter Adão. As a faculty member of Singularity South Africa, Valter is recognized as an expert in the fields of disruptive innovation, business reimagination, and emerging technologies in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. Valter also holds an MSc and an MBA, and has trained with Roger Martin as a master strategist. As Deloitte Africa's Chief Digital and Innovation Officer and a member of the firm's Global Innovation Executive, Valter works at the intersect of strategic and innovation thinking with emerging technologies and design. Valter is a corporate entrepreneur with extensive experience in venturing and commercializing business across a number of industries. Valter is recently the recipient of the Constellation Research Transformation 150 Award, which recognizes the top global executives that are leading digital transformation efforts. Valter was also recently selected as a finalist for South Africa's Digital Industry Professional of the Year by the South African Professional Services Academy. As a Singularity South Africa faculty member, Valter is recognized as an expert of, that is a repeat. That is Valter Adão. Thank you. Our next faculty member would be Phathizwe Malinga. Phathizwe Malinga is a part of the SingularityU South Africa faculty with a focus on connecting things to the internet, IoT. He coined the phrase IoT is as simple as A, B, C, D. Applications plus back-end platform plus connectivity plus device. He looks at how to use resultant big data and the power of smartphones to help solve some of Africa's challenges. He has been involved in the information technology and telecommunications industry for over 2 decades and has held several management level positions. As the managing director of SquidNet, a fully owned subsidiary of Dark Fiber Africa, Phathizwe is responsible for building an IoT connectivity business in South Africa in partnership with international IoT giant Sigfox. Phathizwe is no stranger to the role of strategist, as he consulted with Max Healthcare and worked for the Life Healthcare Hospital Group in his previous position. He completed his executive MBA from the School of Business, Cape Town. He also guest lectures at the University of Cape Town and sits on the board of BizMed Consulting. Our next final panelist is Adam Pantanowitz. Adam Pantanowitz is a fanatical technologist who enjoys solving seemingly unsolvable problems, particularly with the help of cloud computing and machine learning. He is part of the SingularityU South Africa faculty with a focus on biotech and speaks about the future of technology with a focus on tech-human convergence, as well as robotics and AI. He is no stranger to lecturing and has been passing the baton in the faculties of engineering and medicine at WITS since 2009. Since studying biomedical and electrical engineering, he has worked in the fields of biotech and software. His innovations have resulted in a number of patents, academic papers, and creations. Some of his other collaborative innovations include a hands-free controlled surgery interaction system, CPR monitoring system, and a computer-based sign language entrepreneur. Adam is a fellow of the Institution of the IET and is a chartered internationally as an engineer. He co-founded businesses Aura, Terrific, Lobuntu, among others, and acted as CTO of an indirect tax fintech business. Adam is currently part of numerous COVID-19 response teams, spanning from industry to academia to government. These guys have amazing credentials. If they could hear you applauding, I'm sure you would be. But with that, I think we want to kick off the start of the panel discussion. We can go starting off with our first panelist, Tanya. If you want to, we're going to give each panelist a couple of minutes just to introduce themselves and talk about where they are in the world and where they think COVID's going, and then we will open it up to questions. Kicking off first with Tanya. How's it, Tanya?
Hey, Mick. Hi, everyone.
Thanks so much for taking part in this.
Thank you. Right, so let me just share a few thoughts. So obviously working for Binance, we are a completely decentralized organization. So the adjustment working in the COVID environment, I've worked in, this is my second startup now. It's been very much sort of business as usual, because we're used to this sort of environment where people are working from home or are working remotely. And Binance has a decentralized team that operates in 40 countries around the world. The team are in 40 countries. And I think for us, it's been very interesting to see how other businesses are adopting to this new way of working. But at the same time, we've been able to share some of the experiences that we've had as an organization over the last 2 to 3 years of how to operate in this way. And for me, a lot of the conversations in the COVID space are leading towards how decentralized technology and people actually can be. So things like the decentralized internet protocols have been around for many, many years in the blockchain space. And this is starting to come to the fore in terms of some of the COVID discussions that are taking place. We also seen a big movement around a lot of charity work that's going on towards COVID from the blockchain industry and from the crypto industry, where the industry is actually coming together to try and raise funds in a completely different way to what we've seen before, and try and support some of the relief efforts from a COVID perspective. For me, what's quite exciting in South Africa is that we've had a number of things launching during this period. So the South African National Blockchain Alliance actually launched their program last week. This was completely done virtually and coordinated by the CSIR. And part of that discussion was about a UCT group that has come up with ways to actually use blockchain technology to help with tracking the COVID epidemic, really, and people who have been exposed to the virus. So essentially a bunch of UCT students are developing an application on blockchain that is able to trace who has contracted the disease and then their social movements around that for a period of 2 weeks. And I think some of these developments will become very, very important going forward as we start to use these applications of blockchain technology from a tracking and monitoring of COVID perspective. So Mick, I think those are some of my high-level thoughts. I'll share some more as we get into the panel.
No, thanks. That was great. Thanks so much. We're going to move over to Valter for your opening comments.
So good evening, everyone. Great to see such a fantastic turnout. Perhaps just some quick comments on this. The nature of my organization is that we've embraced remote working a long time ago. You know, we've got to be in many different places at the same time with a variety of expertise. So this transition into what we're experiencing at the moment was probably less traumatic for our organization than other organizations due to the mobility of our people. But despite that, we've had to go through a tremendous amount of adjustments. And we'll speak about those adjustments in terms of how we think about business and how we think about our people and their career capital, etc. But perhaps something to highlight is that, I mean, we're looking at this crisis in 3 chapters, which is respond to the crisis at hand. Then we've got to focus on recovering post the crisis, and we've got to ensure that whatever we put down from a recovery perspective, and when I say we, I'm talking about all of us as an economy, as a variety of businesses, etc. After, you know, when we design our recovery, we've got to design it in order to thrive in this new normal that we're going to be in. So we've been exposed as one of the first responders around the COVID response from government. And now what's keeping me up and what's getting me out of bed in the morning is the engagement that we're having with a variety of organizations, big organizations, right down to small startups, around positioning for their response as soon as we come out of the lockdown on the 17th of April, because I think the journey ahead of from there is going to be faced with a tremendous amount of challenges and a lot of unknowns. So we're going to have a small window of opportunity to strengthen our businesses and get them ready to thrive. Critical, I think it should be on everyone's mind, is what is it that we do to keep as much of our economy intact, to keep as much of our businesses intact, and to make sure that we as individuals and the skills that we have remain relevant for what has to happen next. I think that is super critical. So I'll be spending a bit of time with you around future of work constructs at an individual level as well as at an organizational level, but also perhaps unpacking some of the leadership mindset that's required to navigate through this environment, and also maybe reflecting on the new business models that many of the startups have embraced, you know, decentralized supply chains, collaborative consumption, and digital catalysts, and maybe unpack how they're faring and how to think about their circumstances. So thanks, Mick.
Thanks, Valter. Thanks for that. Our next faculty member, can we get Phathizwe Malinga to share his thoughts.
Thanks, Mick. First thing we have to try and solve is how far the mute button is from where you are at the time Mick refers to you to chat. I'm Phathizwe Malinga. I work for a company called SquidNet. We are a network provider. If a network provider is for humans, we would be talking about things like Vodacom, Cell C, MTN. That's what we mean by network provider. The network that I work on is exclusively dedicated to non-humans. So it's not ghosts or extraterrestrials, but objects and assets that we own. So we focus on building a network that allows for your assets to speak to you. I think when we think about where we are around the COVID, and then we interlace that with probably a year ago, our president starting to talk about 4IR, the fourth industrial revolution, and these two worlds are starting to merge, and we have opportunity, depending on the lens that you look at it, to all of a sudden do what I've been hoping that we do as Africa, which is leapfrog this continent, improve the lives of the people that live on this continent to be at par or at least parity, equal to countries like the West. One of the frameworks that I was reminded of when COVID kind of kicked off was something called the Kinefin framework. I think you spell it Kinefin, C-Y-N-E-F-I-N, the Kinefin framework. But it just talks about any kind of problem that you face, and that problem is either a very simple problem, or it can become a complicated problem. You know, simple problem is 1 + 2, complicated problem is 1 + 2 + 3. Then it moves into a complex problem from complicated, and eventually into this chaos world. And when COVID happened, I just thought, what we're actually trying to do is we're avoiding leaping from simplicity all the way into chaos. And a lot of the fake news and the fake media that we're starting to hear, I think can happen in that chaos world. And what we want to try and do is manage complexity and manage it in a way that that gets us to get over this, flatten the curve in whichever direction that we speak about. And that's where I believe, weirdly enough, IoT fits in. It's about generating data in a space we've never been in, a very complex space. We're talking about townships where we've had nothing that's happened in terms of townships. We're talking about the East having this virus develop, the West not responding to it properly, and so there's semblance of hope, but how do we tackle and how do we tailor it for in Africa? And that's what I think we have as an opportunity when it comes to big data. And when I think about big data and the type of data that your assets are generating, it's to do another kind of construct, which is to move from reactive all the way to prescriptive. And if I can use ventilators in terms of this example, we need to start on the reactive side of things, where we start going, where's the ventilators? Where are the people that need the ventilators? Then we need to move into the proactive side, is of all the ventilators that we have, are they in use? Are they being optimal? And then we move into this predictive space, which gets even more complex than that, which is predictive, where we want to say, based on the rate of infection in Khayelitsha versus the rate of infection in KZN, where will we need these ventilators, and start moving them in our supply chain to get to the places that they require in time. But here's the holy grail for me, is moving into this prescriptive space. And we saw in America, I think it was the Washington state that said, we ordered all of these ventilators, but we don't need them, so rather send them to New York so they need them. We want to get our big data to that position where we don't need a human being making that decision. Our data can tell us, send the ventilators over there versus over here. And I look forward to having lots of conversations about how do we practicalize all of this, how do we stay energized, and how do we avoid falling into chaos and remaining in the space where we can manage the complexity. In a nutshell, hello.
Is it? I think it's amazing what you're saying, and it's unbelievable the speed at which everyone is acting. we have to be agile, and even governments like the American government, the agility that we're seeing is just incredible. Yeah. So, there is a rapid response here, and I think the ventilator initiative is definitely hugely important for South Africa. We got our final panelist. We got Adam Pantanowitz. Adam, if you want to give us a few comments.
Thank you, Mick. Great to be with everyone this evening. Thanks so much for joining us. I think that I'd like to start off by saying that if we talk about some of our grand challenges, and I think health is obviously one of the world's grand challenges, it's really hit us now how impactful health can be when there is a healthcare crisis. We often say that we take our health for granted until something goes wrong. And now, simultaneously, something is potentially going wrong with our global health. And that's something that I think hasn't happened in a very long time, potentially in most of our lifetimes. We've never experienced this type of unprecedented event. And what's amazing to me now is we're seeing an unprecedented response. All of a sudden, the whole world is galvanized. The whole world is gathering together to try and fight a common enemy. And I think that for us, we speak about this rebirth of society, building a society that we want to live in, where we're going. And it seems to me that we are, as a species, starting to align on our prioritization, starting to really understand our global community and the implications of the global community and what that's meant to us, having gone through our first collective joint healthcare crisis. And I think it's been quite transformative in terms of our conversations. And one of the challenges that I think we face is that this is a crisis of severity. And as individuals, we need to be sure that we allow ourselves the space to deal with the severity so that we can allow ourselves to get into the space of creativity, because there is such a massive opportunity here when we reemerge as a society once we have this solved. It seems that with getting all of our energy collectively faced at this challenge, we have astounded ourselves in how quickly we can respond. And we're seeing some really amazing responses. Some of the things that we talk about at SU are, for instance, moving ourselves into digital spaces. And that's something that really interests me, how our brains can move into digital spaces and be part of networks. And now we're seeing a great acceleration of that movement. So this has been almost a catalyst for some of the things that we've predicted. For a long time, we've been having conversations about robots potentially taking our jobs. And now suddenly we have a new threat that's looking at potentially taking our jobs. So some of the things that we've discussed before have been catalyzed just through a different medium. And it's just such an interesting time in that regard. But we're also seeing some incredible reactions. Like, for instance, Tanya mentions Bitcoin. I'm seeing a new currency emerging in the form of toilet paper and disposable goods, and there's a new rush on that stuff. And we're also seeing an amazing approach to online shopping, where people are using online shopping the way that they used to buy concert tickets, by hitting refresh. You no longer have to wait to buy Dave Matthews Band tickets, Mick. You actually just hit refresh for your groceries these days. So we are certainly living in a different time, and it is changing the way that we live. But I think there is really huge potential in our reforging of societal priorities. And I think society is really starting to get to grips with our priorities at the moment. I think those are my introductory thoughts.
No, thanks for that. Thanks so much. I think, being part of this global community is unique. It's becoming smaller and smaller, this little global village that we all live in. And I just want to also give a shout out to the South African government for the way they acted. It's been really, fast response. There's been some incredible measures taken place. I saw a great article in the BBC about how we're slowing down the curve, which is ahead of a lot of other countries. So big kudos to our government. And I think if we all come together, we can really assist government as well as in our own private capacity, make a real difference and get over and fight this thing. So let's start with our panel discussion. We're going to start with our first round of questions. I'm just going to kick it off by asking a question. And if you guys have questions, you can raise your hand and we will come to you, and then turn on your video and turn on your sound so you can ask the question. So let's start with Tanya. I think, Tanya, you mentioned some of the great new innovations that are coming in the blockchain crypto space. A lot of people are saying, you know, is it safe to hold money in the future? You know, is this going to be the end of physical cash?
Yeah, very interesting point, Mick. So there's been a lot of central banks around the world that are looking at digital currencies or digital retail currencies to say how can they implement those. I think a lot of these projects stemmed from the announcement by Facebook and a consortium of another 26 companies that launched something called Libra last year, which was a project to look at cryptocurrency across there. So central banks started to sort of wake up at the time and say, should we rather be issuing some sort of digital currency at the time? A few of them have issued some RFPs to look at this, including the South African Reserve Bank. But what's been very, very interesting is that now with the COVID crisis, this topic has really come to the fore again, because you know, the handling of cash now at the time of the virus has become something that is posing a great threat to people. So while we saw a lot of momentum around the switch to digital currencies, it seems like it's now even ramping up, you know, a further level. I think the other point around this is the way people are considering what is a safe haven for money right now. So a lot of the crypto enthusiasts said that Bitcoin would potentially, in a time like this, you know, the price would soar. We haven't necessarily seen that over the last month or so. It's been quite volatile in the same way that some of the stock markets have. But it's also getting us to question the whole financial system. So the bailouts recently announced by the US government, you know, they range in the region of $2.3 trillion. People are saying, how is this sustainable? You know, right now, the US is able to print money because the dollar is really considered a universal currency or the core currency for the whole world. But essentially what happens in a time of crisis is that the rest of the world goes and buys up these US dollars. And essentially what the US government does is it ships its inflation off to other countries. You know, there's very few countries in the world who have the ability just to print money in the same way that the US does. You know, if we look at our neighbor Zimbabwe, when they did the same thing, it didn't quite have the same effect that it does when the US government does it. So I think it's really starting to say, what are the safe havens for money right now? And how sustainable are these bailout packages that governments can just continue to try and print money and stimulate the economy? Obviously, the Bitcoin enthusiasts in the space are saying that it's not sustainable, and eventually it will sort of you know, weed itself out, and a lot of the cryptocurrencies will become far more respected. So it's a very interesting time from that perspective, not only from the handling of physical cash and the move by central banks to look at a digital equivalent, but also the role of cryptocurrencies and what they can do in the future as a store of value or a medium of exchange around the world. And I think the COVID crisis is just accelerating some of these debates and these discussions.
No, awesome. Thanks for that. Are there any questions around Tanya's answer? If anyone wants to ask anything before we move on to the next question. Okay, I think we will move on to asking Adam then. Adam, what are some of the work-life balances you think we need to engender during this time to look after ourselves, and how do we, you know, focus on staying motivated and productive during this lockdown?
Thanks, Mick. I think for a long time I've been obsessed with productivity, and this is an interesting question. Maybe to share with you my thoughts, I'd take you back a few weeks. We started to hear about this properly in, I think, late Jan, early February. And I think in the past, in the world, we would have seen a pandemic spread in a very different way. We wouldn't have had this global mind share of the pandemic instantaneously, which was such a fascinating change. It almost got into our minds long before it could possibly get into our bodies. And that has been entirely different from any global pandemic that has happened before, because we've got this amazing interconnected network. And the internet gives us great power in that regard. And so I think for me, I started to see signs of this in early February. And in our modern world, we see these signs much sooner than we ever would have. And seeing those signs, I think we started to immediately mount a work response. And that work response has been to look at this pandemic from a few different perspectives. First, it was from a modeling perspective, and now it's been from a very reactive engineering perspective. How can we support the initiatives that are happening at the moment? But I think that the core point I'm trying to make is that for the first time, we're seeing this information spread much faster than the event itself. Before, pandemic would strike a nation and that nation would know about the event from the event. We had time to prepare because of our information networks, and that's been truly remarkable. So I think my transition from my work life, and I was mentioning in the breakout room just before this, there's been great continuity for me personally, because from a productivity perspective, I've been very used to working in digital ways and spaces and working remotely for quite some time, and have done so, in fact, for most of my career. It's just that I've been doing it often out of coffee shops instead of out of, your own home. But that continuity has meant for me that the transition from a work perspective has been quite easy. And it hasn't been easy for most of us. I think people are finding it hard to stay motivated. And I think there are all sorts of things that we can do from a productivity perspective to help with that. I think that maintaining the separation as much as one can in one's own work-life balance is critical. So even though you're still working in home, to try and delineate as much as you can. Now, of course, we all bring our whole selves whenever we go to work or when we attend work, even from our homes, right? But at the same time, it's important for us to be able to disconnect, not only from a work perspective, but also from that information avalanche that you mentioned earlier, Mick, around the influx of knowledge and information that we are getting, as valuable as it is. I have many more thoughts on productivity, but I don't want to take up too much of our time. So I'm going to shuttle from here.
I think that those were some great points. And I like you always, make sure you are well dressed, and you it's almost like being there in real life, but we're online. So thanks for that, Adam. We have a question from Shalendra for the group. Anyone can answer this. She wanted to ask, do we think this could be the end of capitalism as we know it? So I think let's direct that to Valter, if you want to answer that one. And Valter, I want to add on to that question. Is this the end of capitalism as we know it? And how do leaders prepare for this? And how do we actually get our leaders ready for this type of thing? You're on mute there, Valter. Just unmute you. Oh.
There you go. All right, fantastic. Sorry, I think I was trying to unmute myself, and so were you. Look, that's a really tough question. I don't know if it's the end of capitalism, but it's definitely a new way of collaborating and cooperating. And I think in the South African context, I've been incredibly proud to see how large organizations have stepped in to support government. It's absolutely been phenomenal. You have a look at what the retailers are doing, what the banks have done, what the telcos are doing, what healthcare companies are doing. It is all at a huge economic loss, but they're doing it for a common cause. And so it says that there's a role to play. For capitalism plays a significant role in every economy, or big business plays a role in every economy. And government plays a role in every economy as well. So the key thing is to move away from a competing and domineering mindset that I think has existed in the past between these two broad pillars of the economy, into one that is far more cooperative and collaborative. I think we're seeing that's where we get the best results. And South Africa is, as a South African, it has been a while since I've been this proud to see the mechanisms of our economy working. Unfortunately, we've also got other complexities that we still need to figure out. But perhaps this is going to be the opportunity for us to move swiftly and boldly to resolve some of the challenges that we have locally. In terms of the leadership that we have in place, some of the things or that we need at the moment from all facets, whether you're a small business or whether you're a CEO of a large organization or a a person working in government, there's a couple of things that we need to reflect on. Is that every single plan that we all thought we had to keep us resilient into the future has been proven wrong. In other words, most of our organizations have been punched in the face. And so those plans that we thought we had aren't really standing up to this, right? So that's the one thing. The second thing is that a lot of the forecasts that we had at the early stages of this outbreak were wrong. They either overestimated or underestimated the severity of this of the spread of the virus. And so it speaks to a mindset that says that we can't use the past to determine the future, specifically in the environment that we're in. And I think this is what makes what we've seen in our presidency so amazing, is that they were able to see ahead of the curve. They were able to imagine the progression of the curve, and they made the bold decisions before there was enough evidence that this thing was going to go exponential. And we've been lauded around the world for those decisions. The currency for success at the moment is leadership. And it's leadership at a corporate level and at an individual level. And then the last thing I want to reflect on before I move into the leadership that we need is we have all taken in the last 10 days a huge step forward. We're thinking very differently about our careers and our career capital. We're thinking very differently about our skills. And we might have even wondered whether or not we've been able to continue adding value in this new work construct. What we've got to avoid, and we're going to have to work really hard to avoid that, is the normalcy bias, is the thought that things are going to go back to normal. And we're seeing a lot of it on the stock exchanges around the world. I think that they're certainly symptomatic of that. You know, we've seen dramatic drop-offs, 25 to 30% drop-offs in stock markets around the world. As soon as there's a bit of good news, the market tries and recover, and everyone says, look, we're recovering. You know, and we're getting this sequence of dead cat bounces. I think we've had about 7 or 8 of those in the last couple of weeks. So we've got to stop looking for evidence that things are going to go back to normal and avoid that normalcy bias, and rather use this opportunity to define what our new personal construct, what our new organizational construct, what our new societal construct is going to look like, and use this opportunity to build from it. I think that's super, super critical. When it comes to leadership, Mick, a couple of thoughts. I think this is leadership's biggest test, right? And I often talk about leaders being cynical and skeptical of change. If they don't understand it, it can't be true. I think that notion is dead. The construct of cynicism and skepticism is dead. The business model killers that we never thought would happen to our business is happening. We're getting a 101 lesson around things that we can't plan for happening at us, right? And I think I'm hoping that this changes that leadership mindset to say, let's lower that cynicism and skeptical volume inside our business and create a culture of experimentation and exploration where we think about these scenarios, we think about the tech that potentially could disrupt business or challenge business, etc. So I think that that's a positive. That cynicism also resulted in the slow adoption of technology. Businesses that have been doing well for many decades are very slow to change. We've seen a couple of businesses falling off, closing down over the last year or two. Big businesses that we never thought would failing. I think there's certainly the big fast forward button has been hit on all business, and it's no longer a discretionary choice. I think we all need to now. It's no longer reimagining. I think we need to reinvent ourselves in order to recover and to thrive in this new economic construct. Then a conversation that I've had with a lot of executives over the last week is the curve. The exponential curve had become so hyped that it actually became a bit comical. Everyone's speaking about exponentials and we're using it in everyday constructs. I think it's taken serious again. But my message to leaders, it's not the curve, the exponential curve, that's your threat. Just like it's not technology that's your threat. I think organizations or economies' inability to allocate resources, both people and budget, to reimagine themselves is their threat. The inability to operate without an unconstrained perspective as leaders is the threat. I believe that we've entered an age of ecosystems, and we're seeing ecosystems in how we work, how we're connecting with our people, but also how large corporates are coming together. You know, we've seen corporates like the likes of Discovery and Vodacom coming together to create a new product. So you're not seeing convergence of industries, you're seeing the shaping of a new collaboration. We've seen competitors collaborating. We've seen companies that are unable to produce their product, producing a different product to support economic constructs. So, you know, the convergence of industries have been a debate for such a long time, and we've just shown how easy it is to move into another industry, how easy it is to adapt, etc. But I think what we will see in the future is this age of the ecosystem. It's not just about moving into another sector, it's about moving quick with a partner. That partner could be a corporate as large as you are, or it could be combining with a small startup that can bring expertise and authenticity from a skills perspective that a large organization doesn't have. So I'm looking forward for that collaboration. And then the fourth thing that is a risk to organizations, that when I say it's not the curve, it's the lack of common purpose. And we are being successful as a country, and organizations that are collaborating are being successful in their collaboration because of a common purpose. They've got a common enemy that they need to address. So I think we need to embrace more of that. So just in summary, the four leadership traits that I think we need to see inside businesses as they focus on recovery and thriving in this new construct is embracing that ecosystem construct, the age of the ecosystem. We now have different ways we've proven that we can work across these industry limitations. Having a common purpose, understanding that we all have a common enemy, both within the same organization, within the same industry, within the same economy. So that collaboration for progression is important. The allocation of resources, critical. The tide has gone out. Saying that you are redefining or reimagining or modernizing your business doesn't matter. That's how you've allocated your resources and your budget that matters. And now it shows. The ones that have done it will probably be in a better position than the ones that haven't. And then the final one is that as a leader, having that unconstrained perspective, being comfortable, being vulnerable enough to be challenged, and embracing that mindset of curiosity and exploration inside the business.
Great, thanks so much, Valter. Any of the other panelists want to add to that?
Yeah, sure, Mick, I'll jump in here. You know, just some quick comments to add to what Walter said. You know, we launched Binance into South Africa last week with our fiat gateways, and the team spent quite a lot of time debating, is the time right? You know, it's a lockdown period that just started. Obviously, the world and South Africa is potentially facing an economic crisis. But the decision of the leadership team was really to say, we've been leading this organization in a decentralized way for a long time now. Let's carry on, and let's show people that their businesses don't necessarily need to stop at this time. Let's actually lead and go live now and push even more so than what we previously would have done. And I think that by doing that, it's kept a lot of our business going, our suppliers going, our people who are supporting us. And really, I think this is the time to use the phrase from Sheryl Sandberg, this is the time to lean in and to make it happen. And where possible, not to put things on hold and say, okay, we'll do this after the lockdown is over, but rather find a new and a different way of actually doing it now to fast track your business as much as possible. And I mean, you know, yes, Binance is very, very fortunate that we do run a digital organization that is decentralized, but it's really, we had to change our strategy around what we were actually doing and how we were doing that because of the lockdown period. And really, I think this is the time to step up as managers and as leaders to say, how can we adjust our businesses and not take our foot off the accelerator waiting for this to be over.
Thanks for that, Tanya. We all need to bring in our inner Rocky and bring it to this fight. We're getting a lot of questions from YouTube, and we've got a couple from Zoom. So I'm going to start off with a question from YouTube from Cassandra Moffa-King. Hi, is there any evidence at the moment showing that the engineering industry in the country has now started implementing and moving over to 4IR? That's from Cassandra Moffa-King, who's asking on YouTube.
Yeah, hi Cassandra. Good to have you on the call. I think I stopped my video somehow. Hello. There's lots of evidence in the industry. We've actually got one of the greatest manufacturing arms or think tanks in South Africa, which isn't heavily advertised, but if you think about what we have done previously in companies like Denel, and yes, it is in the military, but our manufacturing has been super intelligent, if you call it that, bar none. But over the years, we have suffered in that third industrial revolution, being taken out in terms of price when it came to what you can get in Vietnam, etc. With the fourth industrial revolution coming on board, we've seen manufacturing companies in South Africa starting to either reignite the electronics industry or just go from strength to strength. We've got companies, recent ones that were in the paper, for example, like Yegani is a manufacturing outfit that kind of got a bit into trouble in terms of manufacturing, but their manufacturing facility out in East London is world class. We've got people like Mara Phones. Mara came up with the first fully made in South Africa, made in Africa phone, and they've opened offices here in South Africa to manufacture phones that are, from chip level all the way to the finished product being made in Africa. We did lose out in terms of the fast consumer moving goods sector. We have only, I think, one of those, but we're starting to see, and I'm hoping with this instant, we're going to start seeing a lot of those coming back. One of the fake media or fake news stories that have been doing around have been talking about how the vaccine, and is the vaccine contaminated or not contaminated, but underlying that story, one of the strong suggestions to our leadership is we need to start making things locally, and we need to start producing locally into our immediate locale. And we've got open patents that we can exploit. We've got manufacturing plants like vehicles. I think it's the NAAM, the National Association of Automobile Makers, that are now producing new ventilators off a spec that has been freely distributed from the UK, and they're ready to go live with that. So we've got a thriving manufacturing industry when it comes to the country. Lockdown and how long lockdown survives, and whether we can produce the quantities that we want to produce from the workforce that is most skilled to produce this for us, is one of those complex situations, Cassandra, that we want to start paying attention to without losing this capability in the thinking space.
I think Phathizwe's points are so critical and pertinent right now. I mean, it strikes me personally. I went through this personal journey at the beginning of all of this, of really feeling very concerned and fearful. And I went through that fearful process and then got into a point where I could start finding myself in a very active process. So I moved over from being, filled with fear to being much more driven by action. And once I'd switched over like that, I found I was able to kind of unlock my own ability to move forward. And all of a sudden I was being active about forging forward, defining my future and my career. And I had to go through sort of an emotional journey in order to get there. And I think that's very shared. I've heard from a lot of colleagues that they're also going through similar things. And I was so encouraged to chat with a group of very strong entrepreneurs in the last 2 weeks. And these entrepreneurs have reforged and re-leveraged the situation into new things. And in many cases, they remarked that they were celebrating the fact that they were loss-making now. And it just seems to me that the nature of industry is changing in that even if they're loss-making, they were celebrating the fact that they were moving forward. I think our industry, as Phathizwe said, has a remarkable way of re-gearing itself. And we're now seeing some of that industrial upliftment. So first we need to go through these processes as individuals. Then we need to start taking action. And then suddenly we all start collectively building and forming action. And what seems to be happening is I'm seeing the most remarkable pockets of society starting to contribute. People are contributing of their own accord for free to all sorts of things, like what Valter was mentioning around responses. We're seeing incredible responses from Wits University, from academia, incredible responses from government. And we have to, as Valter did, applaud government for the incredible response. And then, of course, from industry, this really significant response in terms of getting and repurposing, for instance, ventilation production lines, repurposing existing production lines to create ventilators. One of my long-term collaborators is busy working on a project, that's David Rubin. His project is to create, to use dialyzers to support patients who can't get access to ventilators, because we all know there's a great rush on ventilators at the moment. So it's really, really exciting that there's this massive societal galvanization and upliftment towards this common cause. I think we really have to understand and appreciate that and all move forward through our own internal processes so that we can get to the point where we're ready to participate in this transformation.
Thanks so much, Adam. So we're getting quite a lot of questions that are similar. I'm going to ask Lizzie Mokhale if you want to bring your video up to ask a question. Lizzie, I'm not sure if you have your video open, but if you want us to ask the question, I can. A lot of people are asking, guys, what is work? What do you think work is going to look like post the lockdown and then post COVID? What are your thoughts around that? To the panel.
Perhaps let me open up there, right? So I think that's a really good question, and there's probably two facets to that. One is what is work going to look like from an individual's perspective, and what is work going to look like at a corporate perspective. I think let's start with the individual. Just like we spoke earlier, that this is a business model killer for many organizations. I think this also presents many individuals with the fact that this could be the career capital killer as well. So this highlights the importance of lifelong learning. I think it's such an important thing at the moment. Just like businesses have to, the fast forward button's been pressed, and they've got to quickly reinvent or reimagine themselves in order to respond and to thrive. Us as individuals, we have to do exactly the same. So we've got to embrace that lifelong learning, and it's no one's responsibility for us to get that learning right other than ourselves. It's no longer your organizations or your governments, etc. We've got access to so much free information, there's so many amazing platforms that we've got to take responsibility for how we evolve, we progress, and how we provide back into the environments that we operate in. One of the things that I've been reflecting on with my teams over the last couple of days is whether or not during this time, whether or not at an individual level or at a functional level, we feel that we are still contributing the same amount of value as we did when things were normal. And I think that's a good acid test to ask yourself. We like to test CEOs and how they think about their organizations and their future relevance. I think as individuals, we need to test ourselves and our future relevance in terms of, are we ready for this new economy that we're moving into? The other thing is that we're seeing the rise of the individual. We've been talking about gig economies and workforce ecosystems, etc. I think this has also forced us to think the gig economy properly. So gig economy works when things are working perfectly, but when we get into a situation like this, the first place where people cut down are the gig workers potentially, because that's got the ability to expand and contract based on demand. So we probably will see some kind of version of the gig economy as we progress. Probably we'll see a lot of us moving into the gig economy after this, but it probably will come with more kind of responsibility from the organizations that leverage those gig economies, those gig workers. And then certainly something that's fascinating me at the moment is that a lot of the generational theory that we have, the millennials, the Gen Zs, the the X generation or Generation X, etc. You know, while we categorize people into those categories based on their age, it's actually an economic construct. And often I've said that generational theory only really works if you exist in economically perfect environments like London or New York or Paris or Amsterdam, etc. Where, as in South Africa, we might have people that are born at the same point in time moving into different generational constructs based on the economic construct that they are exposed to, being born into a middle-class home or into a very poor home in one of the slums, right? I think what's happening at the moment is that there's a normalization of that. So millennials, zennials, Generation X's, etc., we've all been exposed to a potential silent generation construct, which is a deep economic rout, deep economic recession, significant job losses. I think we'll quickly define what's important and what's not. It's going to change how we consume. It's going to redefine what we view as important versus be luxurious, etc. So I think that's all going to have a tremendous amount of impact on us as individuals in the work construct. Now, if I take it to the organizational construct, what does this mean from a work perspective? The workforce ecosystem has again been put into the limelight quicker than what we're anticipating. So I've often said, jobs are being disconnected from work. Work and jobs are being disconnected from companies, and companies are becoming platforms. In the last 10 days, all our companies just about have become platforms. And we've got a lot of people that are plugging into the platforms. I think that's going to be the new normal. And I think when we go back into the workplace and we, again, position ourselves for that fighting fit construct for the new economy, I do believe that we're going to be focused on bringing expertise into our business, not just experts, which means that we're going to change the way in which we recruit. It's no longer, putting a job ad out, recruiting talent, developing talent, and retaining talent. It's going to be about accessing the skills, curating the skills, and then deploying the skills inside organizations for long periods of time or short periods of time. So I think we're going to accelerate quickly into that. The second construct that I think will play out in the work environment is the connected workforce, and I often raise this as a thin red line that we've got to be careful not to cross over. And this is the connected workforce is the instance where we monitor the work environment 24/7, but where the work environment also monitors us 24/7. And we've seen many fallouts of organizations, big multinationals that have tried to remotely monitor workforce for performance, manage their KPIs with artificial intelligence, etc., with significant fallout from a labor perspective. Yet now in the last 10 days, we've all embraced, we're very comfortable to be tracked. We're comfortable that our whereabouts are known, the people that we've been in contact are known, what we're doing is known, etc., because it's addressing our protection. So perhaps the sensitivity around data and tracking individuals may loosen up a little bit, and we'll see a lot more of tracking of individuals for performance, for security, for protection, etc. And then I think just to re-highlight is, I think the way in which we collaborate in organizations is going to change. So we'll collaborate amongst individuals, but organizations, as I mentioned, in the construct of the age of the ecosystem, will also collaborate differently. That means we'll be able to get access to skills where that we typically don't have access to by collaborating with corporates in other in industries. And I think a great example is Vodacom and Discovery. I think that's been a phenomenal collaboration. And another one that was of tremendous interest for me, and I think you'll find it quite interesting, was the collaboration between British American Tobacco and a company called KBR. It's a company, Kentucky Probiotic or Probiology, something like that. I forget the exact name, but they are vaccine specialists. So they are working together to try and see if they can create a vaccine in using the tobacco plant as the medium for developing that vaccine. So it's fantastic to see a company like BAT also playing a role in trying to address the COVID situation that we have.
Thanks, Valter, for that. I think a lot of good nuggets in there. And for me, pretty much a lot of what you're saying is it's really important, the network that you're part of and the networks that we create in the future. whether they be, parts of the ecosystem, the platform, the service provider. How do we all connect and increase our own networks to help us thrive at a much faster pace? We've got a lot of questions. We're running out of time. So we're going to ask Jay to give us an AI machine learning question. Jay, if you wouldn't mind coming up on video
Sure.
and putting up your sound. And I think direct this can be to our faculty, maybe starting with Adam.
Okay. Yeah. So Adam's answered part of it already, but first I just wanted to ask, so AI and machine learning is currently being used to develop new antibiotics to stay ahead of the curve for bacterial infections. Is there any initiative locally or otherwise to use AI and machine learning to fast track the development of a vaccine for COVID-19? That is the first part. And the second part, which was partly answered by Adam already, is there a way for us to use 4IR technologies like 3D printing to help with managing the pandemic outbreak? You mentioned ventilators, but masks, shields, and so forth, while a vaccine is in development. That's it.
Okay, I think some real interesting and great questions there. Thanks for the questions. First of all, I think that AI is absolutely used for all sorts of responses. So first of all, there's a big data response, looking at data and information that's flowing out of COVID-19 areas, and using that information to build predictive models, to look at what the future holds, and people are deploying AI for that purpose. But I think more on point to what you raised is looking at computational power to try to solve the protein folding problems associated with the virus. Now, the virus has, of course, biological properties, and people are trying to simulate now using machine learning and other computational techniques to try to find ways to interfere with the virus. And that's happening at massive scale using all sorts of distributed computing models, such as allowing people to contribute their own computing power from home to solving the problem. So certainly there is a big response from data. And I think the third and perhaps most noteworthy one to mention at this point is there's been a very interesting response from some people in the data science community looking at the efficacy of masks in certain regions. And the data science community has found that regions that are using and implementing mandatory masks for all, they call it masks for all, you may be familiar with this movement, they are able to contain much better the spread of COVID-19. So I think that's definitely noteworthy in terms of what the data science community has been doing. And onto the second part of your question, absolutely, there is a big ramp up and a focus now on the delivery of protective equipment for healthcare workers and for the general public. And that ramp up is, first of all, encompassing the production of existing technologies that were used to prevent infection. Of course, things like alcohol and alcohol hand sanitizers, things like masks, medical masks. But then, of course, there's this new movement to create 3D printed face visors, for instance, which is a reaction from the 3D printing community. And those face visors are going to be used as protective gear. They are incredibly effective, it would seem, in helping to prevent the spread of this virus. So there are all sorts of responses coming from industry and society, either new fields or regearing existing competence in manufacturing. And then certainly we saw, I'm sure, Bill Gates's conversation about how they're going to open up 7 production plants to simultaneously, in parallel, pursue a vaccine. And that's a really promising initiative. It shows how prioritization can be done in the face of crisis. It shows that our response can be, 7-fold, literally, in terms of moving towards a vaccine. And there's all sorts of initiatives just like this all over society, from the scientific community all the way through to industry. It's a really exciting time from that perspective, and it really shows how we can galvanize together when society is prioritizing things in a way that I think we've forgotten how to in the past. I think we've kind of lost our way in prioritization, and it seems we're doing a lot better at the moment.
Thanks so much for that, Adam. I think we have run out of time. Should we give one last question to Melissa Subban if you want to open it up to the panel, you can come online and put on your video. Melissa Suwan, for the final question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my question was just around contracting in South Africa. We are quite geopolitical, and we've got a political climate in the labor market. Do you think that this would now move the industry into looking at contracting employees for specific periods of time, or for specific work packages that they deliver versus long-term contracts that we have now?
Thanks for that. Who wants to answer? Anyone from the panel?
Sure. Hi, Melissa. Yeah, spot on. I think it's almost guaranteed where we're going. The amount of capital that we'll have at our disposal as organizations is going to be, and it's going to force us to behave very, very differently and make choices that can see us through pretty unknown patches, because I don't even want to say they're bad patches. They're just the new normal. Pretty long unknown patches, and it's very much booting up a resource, if you call it that, for people to just sit around and wait. In terms of our old world is kind of going to fall away. What we also, I think one of the advantages we have when we look at this lockdown, and half the planet is on lockdown, by the way, 4 billion people are under lockdown, is we are not appreciating, I think, what is coming about from this lockdown. The amount of connectedness all of a sudden that we have to our families. We all have a collective reflection on what becomes super important to us. And most importantly, we know and understand how far we can stretch our resources. So in this world, I don't think it will be a labor, driven, a company-driven argument. It might even be a labor-driven argument where you just want to go in and do just enough to get just enough to survive for just long enough. Because you want to start paying attention to the things that are super important. We look at the countries that have been overrun, and a lot of them didn't get to say goodbye to a couple of loved ones. A lot of them didn't get an opportunity to be plugged into the real world rather than the work world. So I think that push will come from us. And again, we're speaking quite loosely, if I call it the middle class or the working class or the people with computers kind of world. I don't even know what that means when it comes to the people we've prevented from going to earn a living, and how are we going to contract them with the limited resources. I want to echo what Valter said is I think our leadership is doing two things when it comes to South Africa. They're doing something that has never been done globally. I think they're being applauded for acting fast. And I think it is good that they acted fast, but the bravery to run ahead and have no answers. And what I like about them, every night I watch TV like we all do, we see Dr. Mkhize hop on, is they reflect a lot and they look back and they own up to the mistakes that they're making. I don't know what the world looks like post-COVID from that contracting point of view, but I can sure as hell guarantee that our leaders are going to be looking at an environment and saying, what's the most good that can come out of this? What's the most ethical thing that we can pursue in terms of making sure that we contract in the best way possible for South Africa.
Great, thanks so much for that, Phathizwe. I think we've run out of time. There we go. I was on Shane there for a second. Thanks so much for that, Phathizwe. We've run out of time. There's so many questions to get to. We will be doing many more of these sessions. And I really want to say thanks to all of you for making the time to be with us today. We're going to be looking at doing a virtual reality chapter event on the 16th of April. So look out for that. And we will be mailing you the details for that, where that will be taking place in a virtual reality platform called VHive. That will be on the 16th of April. And I just want to say, all of us, we have a very important week ahead of us. We have passed the first week of lockdown, which should show a lot of incubation. So we should be seeing a lot more cases of COVID, and this next week is hugely important. So stay home and stay safe. And thanks so much for joining, and we will see you soon from Singularity South Africa. That's all for this session. Thanks so much to our panelists for their time and for their knowledge. And we'll see you soon. There will be a recording of the session. Thanks so much. Thanks all.